Hi, my name is Brian Henry, and this is my case study over internet use violations and threats over the World Wide Web. I'm going to begin with category 1 and talk about the problem or problems in this case that I discovered from reading this case study, identifying them, and then as well as analyzing them. My analysis begins with what do I know? What did I decide and figure out from the beginning of the article? Some key facts that I saw were that Miss Walker is a beginning teacher with a master's degree in a school with affluent families. I also saw that Miss Walker takes a more advanced and serious approach to her curriculum. Miss Walker pushes the students some more than they are actually accustomed to. Dr. Forbes has discussed techniques to lower the stress of students in class and increase positive interaction with Miss Walker to help her with her teaching strategies. Miss Walker has not yet implemented many of these techniques, however, even though this being her second year of teaching. Dr. Forbes has received numerous phone calls complaining about the class workload, as well as poor instruction by Miss Walker. Miss Walker received an email with a threatening website link to it that she viewed, and Miss Walker reported this link to the principal along with accusations of a possible student instigator. What I felt I needed to know is based on the 5 key questions: who, what, when, where, and why. I felt like we need to ascertain who initiated the email and link. I felt like we need to know what threat level there actually is associated with that link. Is it a prank? Is it something that is for real? I feel like we need to be able to know when and where the email and website were originated. Is it from a school computer? Did they use a school network? Or is it totally outside use? And I also need to know, why hasn't Miss Walker changed her delivery style or implemented any of the suggested changes that Dr. Forbes gave to her? When identifying the problem, I felt like there was more than one problem. One problem, I think, deals with the lack of instructional changes. I think Miss Walker had been given ideas from Dr. Forbes, but the article said that she has yet to implement any of these changes. This is a key factor, I think, to go with why she received the threatening email to begin with, because her style and techniques of delivery don't quite mesh with the students, and she needs to be open for changes. So I thought that was one problem with our case. The second problem occurred, of course, deals with the actual article being threats over the World Wide Web, classroom harassment via threats. I think there's a fine line when we talk about harassment. First off, the harassment occurred off of school property, so that is something different to work with. The harassment also didn't occur one-on-one or personal. It occurred over the internet, and we're still not really sure of all parties that are identified. The second category that we're going to talk about today is a proposed plan of action with appropriate strategies for implementation. With my plan of action, my first step is for me as an administrator, or in this case Dr. Forbes, to meet with Miss Walker to fully discuss the email and the web content, as well as to just talk about reasons why maybe she received them. She can maybe come up with some ideas. Maybe students have been instigating things in class, or we can also talk about her type of instruction and somewhat the complaints that I as the administrator have received about poor instruction. Some strategies that I feel like we could put in place in dealing with this first step. I think first off, I would like to have a female administrator with me or a female school counselor join me in the meeting. I think this would help ease Miss Walker's concerns, as she was very frightened from the attack. I don't want to come into the meeting and start assigning any blame to students or talking about lack of instruction strategies on Miss Walker's part. So I really want to ease her concerns to start with. I think during our meeting we should revisit the discussion about different teaching techniques. That way we can ascertain why she hasn't been able to implement them. And a third strategy for step 1 is that I want to reiterate to her that she was hired because of her extreme knowledge of the content area, and that Dr. Forbes has stated that he personally looks for the most highly qualified teachers available. So just to allow her to feel comfortable with that she is a very highly qualified teacher, but all teachers need to be able to adjust and to change with different students and different classes. Step 2 of my plan of action would entail meeting individually with the students from Ms. Walker's class. We would do this to try to figure out a possibility of who may be started this email and this website campaign. Some different strategies that I would try to implement would include interviewing students whose parents have called to complain in the past. The article mentioned that several parents have called. These could be some that maybe were a part of it. Also, Ms. Walker feels like Randy Franks is someone who might be part of it. I would definitely want to include Randy in this interview process as well. In addition, to be fair to all students, and I want to interview a random sampling. So I don't want to just interview Randy, and I don't want to just interview students whose parents have called to complain. We need to have a random sample. Even though Dr. Forbes stated in the case that he and Ms. Walker would meet the students in the morning, I think it would be better to not make Ms. Franks or Ms. Walker attend. I think she's still going to be on edge. She's still going to be really nervous and upset. I think that's just a difficult situation to put her in. So I think it'd be better for Dr. Forbes, myself as administrator, to pull in my assistant principal, maybe my SRO if I have one, and do the interviews ourselves and not include Ms. Walker to begin with. Step 3 of my plan of action would be to set up or to reestablish a mentorship program for Ms. Walker. She is only in her second year of teaching, even though she's highly qualified, has a master's degree. I feel like it would help her to help find a veteran teacher in the district that Mrs. Walker could partner up with to discuss teaching strategies. I also think I would allow Ms. Walker to visit other schools, possibly if this is a large district, other schools in our district as well as other schools in the surrounding area, where she could sit in on another teacher's class. That way she can find different teaching strategies. I also would encourage Ms. Walker to go to different in-service trainings or workshops that deal with different teaching strategies, maybe possibly student discipline issues, just to give her the most advantageous, I don't know what the keyword I'm thinking of, just a good set of tools that she can use in her classroom. Category 3, we're going to talk about resolving the issues based on promoting the success of all students. So what is best for students? I think a resolution based on success for all students would include that, first off, for the problem, since I thought there were 2 problems in the case. The first problem dealt with internet threats. I believe what would be best for the students in this case is, first off, look at what does the school's acceptable use policy say about internet violence. It should be pretty clear and set forward already. If the instigator is found, the punishment should be set forth already in our school policy, and we should be able to go straight forward from there. We do want to make sure that we follow due process. We want to make sure that the best interests of the students is at hand. We don't want to blackball Mr. Franks. We don't want to make sure that we automatically jump to conclusions on who might be responsible for this. As for the second problem with Ms. Walker's teaching strategies, I believe the following is best for the students. I would encourage Ms. Walker to visit with a mentor teacher about successful teaching strategies. This would help lower the stress level of the students, therefore they wouldn't be so upset with Ms. Walker. I encourage her to visit area schools and see how her curriculum is taught elsewhere. And I would let Ms. Walker know that you're in complete support of her no matter what is said or done during or after this process. A resolution to our problems, going with some data and facts. Some of the facts: Ms. Walker's instructional delivery material is not conducive to the students in class. That was ascertained by reading this article. She hasn't changed her method of instruction, and she did receive an anonymous message. Some of the resolutions, like we've already talked about, have Ms. Walker communicate with other departmental teachers. She needs to follow up on the principal's suggestions too. If she's not following up on suggestions that the principal is giving, that can lead in some cases to insubordination. We want to make sure that we don't jump into conclusions and point out people that I believe it's Mr. Franks. We want to give everybody an equal opportunity. Category 4 is debriefing the problem by reflecting on what you were thinking, feeling, and valuing. My personal reflection of the problem: at first read, I was convinced the main problem dealt with the email and website harassment that Ms. Walker received. However, after reading over the study, I began to wonder why someone would create the threat to begin with. Is the real problem Ms. Walker's instruction, or is the problem that Ms. Walker hasn't implemented the techniques that Dr. Forbes discussed with her on reducing the student stress and increasing her positive interactions with students? What was I thinking during this process? My first thoughts jumped to how to protect Ms. Walker from this type of cyberbullying. Next, I began thinking what would cause these students or parents to create such a demeaning site. Finally, I began to think about the statement from Dr. Forbes stating that Ms. Walker had failed to implement any of his suggestions to change her teaching style. At this thought is where I discovered there may be more than one problem from this scenario. What was I feeling? I have a little close ties to this. My wife went through a situation similar to this several years ago during her second year of teaching. She had a few students say how they would egg her house because she was a mean teacher. The administration chalked the incident up to just kids being kids and that it being a prank, and I didn't think that was the best way to handle it. Having been directly affected from this end, I immediately felt anger for Miss Walker towards the mean students. I then began to feel regret that we may not be able to solve the problem as to who sent the email and created the website. Finally, I felt disappointed in Miss Walker that she hadn't tried to change her teaching methods over the course of the year. No teacher deserves to go through this type of treatment. As an administrator, I want Miss Walker to feel safe in her teaching environment, but I also need to feel that she is trying new methods if her old methods aren't connecting with the students. What was I valuing? I value character education. It seems to me that a handful of these students lack the character given to a rock. Whenever you have bullying occur in any shape or form, you value respect. Students have failed to give the teacher due respect, and I hope as an administrator I come across as someone who always shows respect, not only to my staff, but also to my students. Finally, I value support. There are always more ways to show and give support to staff and students. Ms. Walker definitely needs support and feeling safe right now, but she needs more systems of support when it comes to her teaching style as well. So what is left unresolved? First off, who did create the website? We really don't have a clear-cut guideline there. And then why did they create the website? And then also, why hasn't Ms. Walker implemented the new teaching strategies? Category 5 is reflections based on the standards. Standard 5 talks about success for all students. As administrators, we are to promote the success of all students. To what extent, though, however, do we work towards? Simply because students may be used to getting their way at home in this affluent neighborhood, it doesn't mean that they should get their way in school. Ms. Walker may be making it tougher to earn an A, but students who are at the top of their class should be more prepared for tougher classes. She may be preparing them for more success in the future by how she is instructing. Sense of integrity and ethical behavior. It is of utmost importance that the administrators show support for and help Ms. Walker regain her confidence in the classroom. It is very important that the administration use ethical treatment of the students. It is imperative that Dr. Forbes doesn't jump to the conclusion that Randy is the culprit simply because Ms. Walker thinks so. Due process must be followed when interviewing the students, as well as working with Ms. Walker and a plan to help her instruction in the classroom. We need to treat people fairly, equitably, with dignity and respect. It is important to treat Ms. Walker with respect and to take her feelings into consideration. Don't simply blow the incident off as being only a prank. When interviewing students, it is critical to be fair and reasonable and treat them with respect. Give students a role possibly in determining what the real problem is, what caused them to want to send this message to begin with. And we want to demonstrate personal and professional code of ethics that inspire. We want to support the teacher and her feelings. Make sure to follow due process when we are interviewing the students. We want to follow school guidelines and rules already established when it comes to disciplining students. Even though you as an administrator has a good track record of hiring highly qualified teachers, don't be afraid to admit a mistake. If Ms. Walker doesn't quite fit in, Mr. Forbes needs to be prepared to help her adjust if possible, or even be prepared to non-renew her. This is my case study over threats over the World Wide Web and the Internet. I am Brian Henry. Thank you for your time.